The border between the United States and Mexico has long been a focal point of political, social, and economic controversies. In recent months, the deployment of U.S. military forces to this region has significantly increased, marking a major shift in the approach to border security under President Donald Trump's administration. As of May 2025, approximately 11,900 U.S. troops have been stationed along the border, accompanied by advanced military equipment such as Stryker armored vehicles, surveillance drones, and naval warships. This display of force, described by some as a shocking militarization, has sparked intense debates about its impact on immigration policy, civil liberties, and U.S.-Mexico relations. This article provides a comprehensive analysis of the recent military deployments, the establishment of military zones, and the broader context surrounding these developments. In April 2025, the U.S. Department of Defense designated a 60-foot wide strip of federal land along the U.S.-Mexico border in New Mexico as the New Mexico National Defense Area. Spanning 110,000 acres and integrated into Fort Huachuca Military Base, this area allows U.S. military personnel to detain migrants and intruders without invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807, which restricts military involvement in domestic law enforcement activities. On May 2, 2025, a second military zone, the Texas National Defense Area, was established, covering a 100-kilometer strip of land east of the Texas-New Mexico border near El Paso, under Fort Bliss. These zones effectively reclassify border areas as military bases, granting soldiers the authority to detain individuals crossing the border illegally and hand them over to U.S. Customs and Border Protection or civilian law enforcement. The creation of these zones enables the Trump administration to bypass the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878, which prohibits the military from engaging in civilian law enforcement activities. By designating border areas as military bases, the administration has allowed soldiers to treat migrants as intruders on federal property, a move critics describe as militarizing the border and undermining constitutional protections. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has defended this strategy, stating, "Anyone who deliberately enters that area illegally is trespassing on a military base, a federally protected area." The scale of the military presence along the border is unprecedented in recent history. As of April 25, 2025, the number of troops surged from 2,500 in January to 11,800, a 379% increase. These forces include active duty soldiers from the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, Colorado, along with National Guard units and support personnel. The Pentagon has also deployed over 50 Stryker armored vehicles to Fort Bliss, equipped with thermal and infrared cameras capable of detecting movement from a mile away. Surveillance drones, reconnaissance aircraft, and naval warships patrolling the Pacific Coast and Gulf of Mexico further bolster the operation, known as Joint Task Force, Southern Border. Stryker vehicles, originally designed for battlefield operations, are being used for detection and monitoring rather than direct combat, according to military officials. However, their presence has raised concerns about the optics of deploying combat-ready equipment in a civilian context. The use of military aircraft and naval assets underscores the administration's commitment to treating border security as a national defense priority, a stark departure from previous administrations, which relied on smaller-scale deployments. The militarization of the border has led to new legal measures against migrants. In late April 2025, the U.S. Department of Justice began prosecuting individuals who illegally entered the New Mexico National Defense Area, charging them with both illegal border crossing and trespassing on a military base. At least 82 migrants have been prosecuted for entering these zones, with 28 facing federal trials. Although soldiers have not yet directly detained migrants, they are authorized to do so and transfer them to CBP or local law enforcement. These prosecutions mark a significant escalation in immigration enforcement. Migrants caught in military zones face charges ranging from minor to severe, with penalties of up to 10 years in prison for offenses such as damaging government property or evading law enforcement. Critics, including the American Civil Liberties Union of New Mexico, have condemned this approach as a dangerous erosion of the constitutional principle that the military should not be involved in civilian policing. Since taking office in January 2025, President Trump has prioritized a robust crackdown on immigration, pledging to deport millions of undocumented immigrants and seal the border. The military deployments and establishment of military zones align with his executive order declaring illegal immigration a national emergency. This order has mobilized the Department of Defense to support CBP operations, transforming the border security model from civilian-led to military-led. The administration's strategy also includes transferring federal land to the military for border security purposes. In April 2025, Interior Secretary Doug Burgum announced the transfer of 110,000 acres in New Mexico to the military for 3 years, citing the need to protect sensitive natural and cultural resources while deterring illegal immigration. Similar transfers occurred during Trump's first term, including 560 acres in 2019 for border wall construction. Ironically, the militarization of the border coincides with a sharp decline in illegal border crossings. According to CBP data, March 2025 recorded approximately 7,200 illegal crossings, the lowest since the mid-1960s, and a stark contrast to 2023, when daily crossings sometimes exceeded 10,000. Improved access to crossing areas and enhanced surveillance contributed to this decline, even before the recent troop surge. However, the administration argues that a sustained military presence is necessary to maintain these results and prevent future migration waves. The militarization of the border has elicited polarized reactions. Supporters, including Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, view it as a necessary response to a real enemy threatening national security. Posts on the X platform show strong support from some users, with claims that military action has fully secured the border. Conversely, New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham has opposed the establishment of a deportation buffer zone in her state, highlighting tensions between federal and state authorities. Civil liberties organizations, such as the ACLU, warn of potential human rights violations and the dangerous precedent of using the military for civilian control. The use of military zones to bypass the Posse Comitatus Act has raised significant legal questions. By reclassifying border areas as military bases, the administration has created a legal framework that allows soldiers to engage in activities typically reserved for law enforcement. Critics argue that this undermines the separation between military and civilian authority, potentially setting a precedent for broader domestic military deployments. The ACLU and other groups have called for legal challenges to this policy, though no major court rulings have emerged as of May 2025. The deployment of combat-ready troops and military vehicles has been criticized for potentially intimidating and endangering migrants, many of whom are asylum seekers fleeing violence or economic hardship. Prosecuting migrants for entering military zones adds a layer of criminalization to immigration, which may deter legitimate asylum claims. Additionally, the militarization of the border risks straining U.S.-Mexico relations, particularly as Mexico grapples with domestic challenges related to cartels and migrant flows. The deployment of nearly 12,000 troops, along with costly assets like Stryker vehicles and surveillance aircraft, has raised concerns about military readiness and resource allocation. Critics argue that diverting combat units from training or overseas missions to border duties may weaken the U.S. military's ability to respond to global threats. The financial cost of the operation, funded through the defense budget, remains unclear, but previous border deployments have cost billions of dollars. The U.S. military's deployment to the U.S.-Mexico border represents a bold and controversial escalation in the Trump administration's immigration enforcement strategy. The establishment of military zones, the increase in troop numbers, and the use of advanced military assets signal a shift toward treating borders.
That speed picking up in recent days here in the Sunshine State. Construction workers were working on this building behind me when law enforcement came from all directions, descending on them.
Go back. Move back. Everyone back.
Understand we're with immigration, okay? We have a warrant.
Deportation order from 2019. Another.
Seiko, he's got it.
I think so. Hopefully.
Okay. Su apellido es Lorenzo.
Okay. I'm told more than 60 others remain in custody at Lincoln County Jail in North.
What's your name? You can throw him. And what? Yours? You want to use that?
It's like 50-50 right now.
To return home, and 3 others from Guatemala are in Louisiana.
Check out.
Oh.
Subieron lo mismo. Eso es. All 4?
Hey, 12, ready to go? Yes.